If you're frustrated with your financial situation, it could be because you're making one of these common money mistakes. Hello and welcome to Practical Personal Finance, where you get the information you need to understand and succeed with money. Today I've got 10. That's right, 10 of the most common money mistakes that may be preventing you from achieving financial success. As I go down the list, you may start thinking to yourself, man, that sure sounds a lot like me. And guess what? That's okay. No one's perfect. We all make mistakes, especially with money. Identifying and correcting those mistakes is what separates the winners from the rest of the pack. So without any further delay, let's get right to the list with number 10, financing or leasing a new car. Don't get me wrong, there's nothing like driving a brand new car. It's a great feeling. But when that car drops in value like a rock over the first few years you own it, it's not such a great feeling. The newer a car is, the faster it's going down in value. And on top of that, if you finance or lease your vehicle, you're stuck paying interest fees. It's a well-known fact that most millionaires tend to drive 2 or 3-year-old vehicles that they pay cash for. Why do they do that? 2 reasons. They're buying a car that's 2 or 3 years old so that they can still drive a relatively new vehicle, but for way less. In some cases, 40 or 50% less than the newest model. They're paying cash up front so they can avoid giving any more of their hard-earned money to a car dealer via monthly interest fees. If your vehicle is financed, get it paid off as quickly as possible, or sell it and purchase a less expensive car for cash. If it's leased, check out my video on how I got out of my car lease and got paid to do it. You'll be much happier when you don't have a car payment anymore. Number 9 is having way too many subscriptions. Are you subscribed to Amazon Prime, and Netflix, and Hulu, and Disney Plus, and still paying for cable TV? How can you even use all of those services enough to justify that cost? We are living in a world where companies have shifted their business models from pursuing large, one-off purchases to pursuing recurring revenue through subscriptions. For them, it's income they can count on every single month. It's easy to sign up for too many of these things when they're so cheap. $9.99 per month for Spotify, $14.99 per month for HBO Max, 99 cents per month for 50 gigabytes of Apple Cloud storage. That one is sneaky. All of these subscriptions start to add up to hundreds of dollars per month. And if you don't really use them, it's money down the drain. Once or twice a year, take an hour or two to evaluate what you're subscribed to and think about if there are any you could do without. Number 8 is not having an emergency fund. What happens if your car breaks down and needs to be repaired? Or if you sprained an ankle and had to make a surprise visit to the emergency room? Or if you got laid off at work and had to search for a new job? In any of those situations, an emergency fund will bail you out. You can simply dip into that savings account, which should have 3 to 6 months of your living expenses in it, and pay cash for what you need. Without an emergency fund, you're stuck taking out personal loans, or worse, charging everything on a credit card and paying 22% interest when you can't afford to pay it off at the end of the month. Don't allow a bad situation to get worse by forcing yourself to borrow money. Save up an emergency fund. Number 7 is shopping at the wrong grocery stores. Now, I'm not going to stand here and tell you where you need to be shopping, but I will tell you that where you're buying food needs to jive with the amount you decide to spend on food and with your future financial goals. If you're living paycheck to paycheck, struggling to pay off your student loans, and doing all of your shopping at Whole Foods because it's right down the street and it's where your friends shop, that's an issue. When I was working on paying off debt, one of the ways I was able to break the logjam was by shopping at different grocery stores. I went from shopping at Publix, which was a 2-minute drive from my home at the time, to instead shopping at Aldi, which was a 5-minute drive. I instantly began saving $200 per month on food by going an extra 3 minutes out of my way. How much could you save? Number 6 is not shopping around for your car insurance. When's the last time you went online and pulled a quote from a couple of new car insurance carriers? If it's been more than 2 years, you've moved, you've turned 25, or you've gotten married, you're long overdue. It takes 15 minutes to get a quote from a national auto insurance provider like Geico or Progressive, and you may end up saving hundreds of dollars per year without any significant changes to your coverage amounts. If you're a little bit apprehensive about buying your own auto insurance, I made another video where I go into detail about the different parts of a policy and give you my recommendations for how much coverage to select. Link is down below. Number 5 is keeping too much of your money in savings accounts or CDs. And before the comments section fills up with people saying, "But Andrew, what about my emergency fund?" I'm not talking about emergency funds here. Yes, you absolutely, positively need an emergency fund like I talked about earlier. But your emergency fund needs to be 3 to 6 months worth of your basic monthly expenses. If you're keeping any more than that amount in a savings account, you're doing yourself a disservice. Why? One word: inflation. The cost of goods and services goes up by an average of 2 or 3% per year. That money sitting in your savings account is earning 0.1% interest per year, and that's if you're lucky. So that money you've got stashed away is losing its buying power with every passing day. In the case of your emergency fund, that's all right. But for anything above and beyond your emergency fund, you need to be transferring it to a brokerage account and using it to invest in things like index funds containing stocks and bonds. Number 4 is making minimum payments on all of your debts. When's the last time you paid more than the minimum amount due on your student loans, on your car loan, on your mortgage? If the answer is more than 1 or 2 months ago, you need to make a change. Wealthy people don't have any debt. They live in homes and drive cars that they own, free and clear. How did they get to that point? I can promise you, it wasn't by making the minimum payments every month for 5 years on a car or for 30 years on a mortgage. They paid their debts as quickly as possible to minimize the amount of interest fees they would have to pay. The longer you let your debts hang around, the more interest your lenders get to extract from you. Plan to put a little extra toward your debts next month after meeting all of your other financial obligations. They'll be gone before you know it. Number 3 is failing to create a monthly spending plan. Do you ever wonder at the end of the month where all of your money went? Don't worry, I've been there too. I used to look back at my credit card statement after the dust settled and beat myself up over how much I was spending at the grocery store, the gas station, and on Amazon. But then I realized that I could develop a plan in advance for how I was going to spend my money. Rather than letting impulses dictate my spending patterns, I was finally in control. At the beginning of each month, I determine how much money I'm going to have coming in, and then I make a plan for how I'm going to spend all of that money. No more feeling guilty every time I spend money, and no more feeling guilty when I look back at my card statement. Now it's just to make sure it matches up perfectly with my plan. Spend some time at the beginning of each month planning how you're going to spend your money that month. And don't be afraid to say no when you're faced with an unplanned purchasing situation. Number 2 is spending way too much money on housing. For the vast majority of us, our biggest expense is the roof over our head. Whether it's a monthly mortgage payment or a monthly rent payment, it's where a ton of our money goes. If that number is too high, it's going to throw your entire budget out of whack. Imagine if your monthly take-home pay was $4,000 and half of it went to pay your rent. That leaves you with just $2,000 to buy groceries, dine at restaurants, get health and auto coverage, put gas in the car, and more. And if you also have student loans, a car payment, and credit card debt, you can forget about being able to set aside money for retirement or for a down payment on a home. Those extra payments I talked about earlier would be a pipe dream. To break the cycle, you need to either boost your income or cut your housing expense down to 25 to 30% of your monthly take-home pay. That's the rule of thumb when it comes to having money left over for progress toward your goals. And finally, number 1 is living without financial goals. If I asked you what you wanted your financial situation to look like a year from now, would you have an answer? How about 5 years? Or 10 years? The majority of us are drifting through life without giving our financial future any thought whatsoever. Instead of dreaming up ambitious goals and developing an actionable game plan to achieve them, we're waiting around for the government to forgive our student loans, for our employer to pay us what we deserve to be paid, and for Social Security to bail us out in retirement. If you have no idea what you're aiming at financially, you're never going to be truly successful with money. Take some time alone to come up with your very own financial goals. I made a video to guide you through the process. Link is down below. How many of these money mistakes have you been guilty of in your life? How many are you still guilty of today? Let me know in the comments. If you'd like to get an idea about how much you can afford to spend on monthly rent, click right here. And if you'd like to show your support for my channel, click right here to become a subscriber. As always, thanks for watching. I'm Andrew Shear, and I'll see you next time.